this session really is to make sure that everyone is as comfortable as possible going forward into this brave new world of online teaching. And as Emily said, this will be an interactive session. I want to try to give you a flavour of what it's like to do an online lesson. Obviously today we have over 500 people, so it's not going to be overly realistic in that respect, but just in terms of getting your involvement, keeping people engaged. That is, without doubt, the #1 rule for online teaching. Make sure everyone is involved as much as possible. So just a few shout outs really to different countries that I saw at the start checking in. We have people from Kuwait, Romania, Ukraine, Brazil, Thailand, El Salvador, Ukraine, Saudi Arabia, Taiwan, Tokyo, Japan, Greece, Colombia, Russia, Turkey, Poland, Paraguay, Malta, the United States, the UK, Spain, Peru, more countries coming in. Yeah, Brazil, Portugal, Argentina. I mean, it is phenomenal. And I'm always blown away by the amount of teachers who are interested in their own development from all around the world. And I think that's kind of the first clue. We are all in this together. You know, we are not alone. We're all in the same boat. We're all here to learn from each other in as many ways as we can. And certainly there are many kind of forums out there which are supporting teachers. So, I just want to start with a very quick poll actually, just to give me an idea of where you guys are at. So, here's the poll. Choose the answer which is most appropriate for you. So, I've never taught online before, I've just started teaching, or I have taught online a lot. Okay, the votes are coming in. I'm going to give you like 10 seconds to vote. Okay, a lot of you typing in the chat box, which is great, but please try to do it on the poll. It gives us a clearer idea of the numbers involved. Okay, that's long enough. So I'm going to share the results with you. So you should be able to see that unsurprisingly, the vast majority are in the first two categories. I've never taught online, 31% nearly, and I've just started teaching online with 57%. So for you guys, I'm hoping that you'll learn a lot and by the end feel more confident. And even for those who have taught online before and have experience, hopefully you'll pick up one or two things as well. Okay. Let's clear that away. So another quick question for you really. So a lot of you are new to online teaching. I want to know how that makes you feel. Are you a 0, really anxious, nervous, scared, or are you a 10, confident, happy, etc.? So as well as typing a number, type in an adjective that describes your feelings to teaching online. Terrified, scary, excited, confused, anxious, excited. It's going very quickly for me to keep up with. Nervous, stressed, excited, curious, confused again, stressed, overwhelmed, interested, insecure, scared, and excited. I like the mix of emotions there. From Sylviana. Inconfident, anxious, insecure. Okay. As to be expected. But listen, I have good news for you. It will be okay. I promise. Because think about it. Think back to when you first became a teacher, or when you first started your teaching course and how you felt. I remember my first day on my CELTA course so clearly. I was petrified. I knew that I would have to stand up in front of some students for the first time in my life and teach them. I was in all sorts of trouble. But guess what? I got over it. I completed the course. I then got my first job in a school. That first day going in, of course, I was absolutely petrified again, super nervous, despite all the training planning I'd done. But guess what? I survived. And that's exactly the same now. All of you are very, very capable, brilliant teachers already. This is just another hurdle, the next step. And once you've been doing it for a week, 2 weeks, you'll wonder what all the worry was about, because it will become more natural for you. So it's not jumping into the deep end completely, because you are already established, competent teachers. It's just taking those skills and applying them to an online environment and trusting yourself. Jean Nunes says, sometimes we don't trust ourselves, but we do have to trust ourselves because we are where we are. We've got to the place in our lives where we are experienced teachers. So as Mohammed says, it is a matter of time. So yeah, it will be okay. Don't worry about it, I promise. Okay, so how are we going to approach this webinar? So this is the agenda for this first session. We'll look briefly at this idea of asynchronous and synchronous online teaching, 2 words which were probably completely new to you or unknown to you 2 or 3 weeks ago. We'll then briefly look at some online platforms and then looking at how we can use Zoom tools to enhance our coursebook and to enhance our teaching, making sure that it is interactive all the way through. Okay, so synchronous and asynchronous online learning. Like I said, these are pretty new terms 2-3 weeks ago. On the left, we have what is essentially the live lesson, the synchronous lesson. So synchronous distance learning occurs when the teacher and pupils interact in different places, but at the same time. Think about your normal classroom. That is a synchronous learning environment. This is just a synchronous distance learning environment. In contrast, we have the play button here. This is the asynchronous classroom, whereby we are learning at different times and at different places. So essentially what we might do anyway when we give students homework, or we try to flip the classroom maybe. And as Virginia says, right now we are very much in the synchronous classroom. This is my classroom to the world, to nearly 700 of you. But when we're thinking about an online course, we can't think of just synchronous or just asynchronous. We have to integrate them together. That's the absolute key. They do not work independently of each other. So we need to think how we can combine the two. And we'll look more at that in the second session next week. What I want to focus on specifically today is the synchronous classroom and the tools that we can use to ensure that we are teaching to the best of our abilities and, of course, to engage our learners as much as possible. But certainly we need the two together to ensure a continuous and thorough online learning experience. So, synchronous e-learning. Of course, there are several ways in which we can do this. Virtual classrooms, which are provided through an online platform like we're using today. We're using Adobe Connect as our webinar platform, and certainly I know people who have used this for teaching online lessons. I've used it for small classes and for one-to-one classes. But there are lots of other ones out there. But I think when we're contemplating which or what platform we should be using, we need to think about what we actually want to achieve in the classroom. What do we need to make sure our classes run smoothly. So this is a question for you guys, open question. What functionality or tools does an effective online platform need to have for you to be successful teachers? Peter, in answer to your question, Adobe Connect does not have breakout rooms per se, but there are other ways around that. Okay, charts, monitoring, internet connections, sound and quality, video quality, computer. Of course you need a computer. Whiteboard, chat, breakout rooms, polls, interactive chat box. Good. Exactly what we're doing here, right? Resources, audio and video, shared screen, good screen size, definitely. Easy to use interface, polls, chat and whiteboard, stable connection. Okay, you guys know this stuff. It's just a kind of a review, really, because not every platform has all of these things. And these are the ones which are, for me, to be really effective and to get the most out of the classroom experience and to make sure your learners are benefiting the most. These are the different tools or facilities or that your online learning platform needs to have. And most of them you mentioned. Annotation tools I didn't think came up particularly. The ability to record can be useful. Whiteboards, the breakout rooms, the polls you all mentioned. Okay, so that's what we need. Natalia, I will explain all about breakout rooms very shortly. Do not worry. All of these things we will talk about in more detail. And certainly I may not have mentioned everything. Okay, so the key thing here is though that all of these items help engage students in multiple ways and keep them involved. It goes back to rule number 1 I said earlier. This is the absolute key to the online classroom. Because you have to imagine, students are easily distracted in the real world classroom when they can look out the window, look at their phones, whatever it might be. That's hard enough. In an online environment, it's even trickier to make sure your students are engaged and focused. Therefore, we need more ways to keep them involved, to keep them engaged. And that's true of the real world classroom as much as it is for the online classroom. But I'd say for the online classroom, it's even more true because it's so easy for them to switch off. Okay. And I'd say, actually, I'm going to touch on this at this point. I think the key thing here straight away is the camera tool is a really good example of this. Now, because you can see me, it makes you feel better, right? You can feel that someone is actually talking to you, that you're in, maybe not in a room with me, but we're making that connection. Especially because I'm trying where possible to make eye contact with the camera and therefore with you. So let's just do a little experiment. I'm going to stop my camera. And I'm going to ask, how does this make you feel right now? Vacant, alone, lost, uncomfortable, exactly. Okay, don't worry, I'm coming back. I'm here, you can relax. So that's just one little thing that shows you the importance of the camera and having cameras turned on. Now that's for you, but also for your students. They need to have their cameras turned on. They need to be logged on in a system where they can be seen as well. And similarly with the chat box. You've got the chat box and it makes you feel comfortable because you can communicate, you can share. But again, if I take the chat box away, how does that make you feel? And I'll give it back in a minute so you can put your answers in. So, no camera, no chat box. What emotions, what feelings do you have? Voiceless, passive, exactly. And we know that the classroom, no matter whether it's online or whether it's a real world classroom, cannot be passive. Basim was angry. I'm sorry. I don't want to make you angry. So, keeping students engaged, one of the key ways of doing that is through the camera, through the chat box. They have to be involved as much as possible. Now, in terms of the options for these different platforms, there are options, right? And you'll have probably researched already, seen a lot in the press about these ones. For a lot of people, Skype is the default thing they turn to because they know Skype from using it on a social basis. So think, wow, if I can use it on a social basis, I can use it in the classroom as well. And yes, of course you can. But there are limitations to Skype. It doesn't have some of the features that some of the other ones have. And I should say that this isn't all of them. These are just some of the more popular ones. We have Zoom, we have WizIQ, Google Hangouts, Easy Talks, Web Rooms. Peter Smith said Microsoft Teams. Absolutely. I couldn't get everything in here. But, you know, it's your choice of what you use because you need to see what features they have, whether they are enough in their basic form, if you have to pay for the pro version of it, which a lot of them will have. So it does depend on your circumstances and your needs. For my situation, I generally, and the example we're going to use today is with Zoom, because I've used Zoom a lot in the last year or so, and I find that it has all of the features that I need to have successful lessons. But there's a nice article here. You'll get these slides later. There's a website here, which has, on the left-hand side, which has a kind of a really detailed pros and cons of these different platforms. Okay, a lot of debate on privacy concerns on Zoom. Can you address it? Okay, that's actually something we're going to address in the second session, okay? Because I think that the whole safeguarding issue is something that is worth considering. Absolutely. Okay, let's move on. Okay, so like I said, I want to focus on Zoom because that's what I've been using, and it's what I've become comfortable in using, on top of using Adobe as well, I should say. So the first thing I think I like about Zoom is it's really easy to use, even for those teachers amongst us who are technophobes. We're scared of technology, we're worried about it. Zoom, in my experience, and from talking to teachers, is quite easy or very easy to pick up. And you can go into as much detail with it as you want to. But it has the features that you need. Kate French agrees. We got our teachers online in 2 days of Zoom. Amazing. Maciel, Zoom, it's awesome. Perfect. Lots of agreement. Now, I'm not going to do detailed tutorials of all of these things because that would take forever. And quite frankly, it's already been done by Zoom. If you go to the Zoom support site, it has mini video tutorials on every single tool. The annotation tools, the chat rooms, the breakout rooms, the polls, everything. What we're going to look at today is how we can use these in the classroom with our Coursebook to enhance what we already have. So, we've opened our Zoom meeting, and the key thing we want to do here is share our screen. That is, without doubt, the key thing here, because anything that you see on your screen, your students can see as well. And specifically, what I want to focus on is using it with an ebook. Because that's what the session's about, is teaching your Coursebook online. And there are many reasons why using your Coursebook online is advantageous. Okay. Now, pretty much every publisher will have e-versions of their books, especially in this time of Corona. Now, in terms of copyright, this is a question we got a lot last week. As long as you have permission from the publishers, you are able to use your ebook. So if you're currently a National Geographic Learning user, if you use one of our course books and you have the ebook, you need to contact your local representative, and they will be able to provide you with the permission to use the ebook for your online classes. That will, of course, vary on different publishers, but that is National Geographic Learning's approach to it. Contact your local representative, and then they'll give you permission. But my question here is, what are the advantages of teaching online with an ebook? And ask, what if they don't? National Geographic Learning will grant you permission, but you need to get that permission. Okay, good, Ludwig. Ludwig Portillo, number 2. Resources, good. Good, Kate. Material and curriculum, discussion. Get students engaged. It's more practical, Jackie. Yes. It's more interactive. Good, Laura. Recording, sense of direction, Tiago. Yes. All the materials available. You can share the Blackboard. Yes. Audio files are embedded. Yes. Our students have bought books for face-to-face. Yes. Okay. Lots of great materials. Yes. All of these are great ideas. Absolutely. And I think the key one really is the idea that it provides a familiar structure. As teachers, you are used to teaching with a course book more often than not. Now, for me, I think it's incredibly hard to say to a teacher, now you have to teach online and you cannot use the book. You need to create your own materials. That's only going to heighten the stress levels of that teacher because they're already worried enough about teaching online. Now they're doubly worried because they have to find their own material. So using an ebook alleviates that issue. You have that structure, you have that content. That's not to say that you can't build on that and use other resources. Of course not. You would do that in the real classroom anyway. But this just takes that extra bit of stress away. It's what you know. But also it's what students know. And I guess a lot of the time, what students expect. So therefore, it ensures the syllabus, the curriculum is covered. You don't have to worry about it. It's there. And equally for directors of studies, heads of departments, heads of schools, they don't have to worry about creating a massive database of material for their teachers. Here's a course book, teach it. Not necessarily as you would do in the real world, because there are differences, and we'll explore those more in the second session next week, but it's your guide. Another really good advantage of having an ebook is that, generally speaking, they have all of the embedded audio and video. So you don't have to worry about extra files for the audio and the video. Radu, I'll come back to your question later. Because it's a long one. They can include interactive tasks. Depending on the ebook, depending on the publisher, the activities will be interactive, and therefore you can get students to do them for you on the screen. They can have built-in dictionaries. So a lot of the National Geographic Learning ones, they have built-in dictionaries or word finder tools within them. And as well, you can also create flashcards. Certainly with the National Geographic Learning ones, you can do this. So there's a toolbar over on the left-hand side over here. You can see that. And there's an option to create your own flashcards using vocabulary copy and pasted from the ebook. So there are a number of advantages there already. But really, for me, it's that offering of structure and familiarity to the new online teacher. Okay, Maria, the online flashcards, that is through the ebook. That is not through Zoom. Okay, that is through the ebook itself. Okay, Kate Francis is asking, do you need to pay for an ebook? That is a question you need to direct to your local National Geographic Learning sales rep. Okay, Maria, we're going to address your question very soon. Do not worry. Okay, let's move on. So, let's just look at the tools and how we can actually use them to our benefits in the classroom. And actually, I think the tools enhance that whole classroom experience in many ways. And I think that once you've been teaching online for a few weeks, months, and when you get back to the real classroom, you'll be wishing for some of these tools because you'll miss them. I guarantee that. And least amongst those, or not least amongst those, is the annotation tools, the pen tools. Now, I remember when I first started teaching, I was given a black pen and a red pen. Off I went. Which is kind of a little bit limiting because I'm a very sort of visual learner. I like to have lots of colours on the board to, you know, underline, highlight, make the text pop out off the board. So with Zoom, you do have a multiple choice of colours in which you can annotate your page with. You know, you could have your black and red, but you've got greens and blues and purples and pinks should you like. And of course, you can choose different line widths as well. And also when you want to write text, you can choose the font size as well. So these are in Zoom. This is not in the ebook. This is in Zoom. So whatever you're using, whether you're using a website, whether you're using your own handouts on Word, whether you're using a PDF of an activity, these tools are available. So, of course, they can be used for lots of different things. For me, a key one is obviously just to highlight what I want students to do. And I think this is really important in online teaching because you need to make sure that students have understood your instructions. Because online they might get a bit hazy. Maybe the sound breaks up or something. So being able to underline, highlight, circle exactly what you want students to do can help with the clarity of that. You can also, of course, type the instructions in the chat box or in a text box. But it's that clarity of instruction giving which helps the flow of the lesson. I mean, as Ruth said, yeah, clarity is so important. But of course, there are other ways in which we can use the pen tool. So some more interactivity for you guys. How else could you utilize the pen tool in Zoom in your online class? Okay, writing comments, whiteboards, making corrections. Good, Carol. Underline key changes. Correction, error correction, exactly. Highlighter, exactly. Underline key ideas, mark questions, mark mistakes. Okay, good. Analyze the text, draw stars for good students. Perfect. So there's lots of different ways in which we can use the pen tool. But it is not the only tool available in the Zoom annotations. We've got all these ones at the top as well. Within the draw button, the next one I'm going to look at, you've got different things which you can do. You can actually draw lines, boxes, circles, arrows. You can highlight things, and you can blank things out as well. So just to sort of highlight that, for example, you could draw a box around the activity your students want to do. So instead of using the pen tool and drawing a really bad circle, just box it. Or you could use a big arrow. I want you to do this activity. Super clear. Or I want you to read the highlighted area, the features. And I would do this all the way through my activity. I'd give the instructions to my students. I would then highlight, underline, box, point an arrow at what I want them to do. Because I need to check that they understand. And maybe I don't want them to look at the whole page. Maybe I want to block it all out. So this is similar to a tool that you might find on a classroom presentation tool for interactive whiteboard software. And then you'd like slow reveals and things like that. So yes, Lillian, all of these tools are in Zoom. Can we do this with Google Zooms? I've not tried Google Slides through Zoom, so I can't answer that question, I'm afraid. Okay, so that's how we can use the Zoom tool, the draw tools, and the pen tool. What else can we do? We also have, well, actually, this is another example, actually. I can make my own little whiteboard and my own brainstorming section. So I've used the draw tool to draw a circle and draw some lines. And I put in what I want students to brainstorm about. The theme of the lesson is bucket list ideas. So I would get students to annotate the spidergram. Now, what's great about this is that when you are screen sharing through Zoom, you can grant your students the ability to collaborate on the screen. So it is not just the teacher who can annotate the screen. Your students can do it too. They can write. So it is very much collaborative in this respect. They are working together. So that's one way of doing that. You can also just use the chat box for giving instructions, like I said, or asking additional questions. So for example, imagine you've come across this wall. What bucket list wishes would you write on it? And then get your students to write their ideas in the chat box, which you would pull up. Now, again, to keep you guys involved, in our chat box on the right-hand side, can you write down what one of your wishes that is on your bucket list? Okay, Maggie K, how can students annotate? You have to grant them permission. When you set up the room in Zoom, you have the option of allowing people in the meeting to annotate. Oh, visiting Taj Mahal, says Carol. Learning Spanish, says Anna. Michelle says go to, where's, I think probably, or someone to go to Kyoto, travel to Japan, excellent health, travel to all the continents I've not visited. Okay, lots of visiting Paris, teaching maths to ABE students, travel to Bora Bora, Barbara, very nice. To roll back Corona, yeah. Wouldn't we all like to do that? To have a cleaner earth, travel, Vietnam, stay healthy, to love everybody, says Marcella. To touch my toes without bending my knees, says Elizabeth. Yeah, I feel for you on that one. Buy a new super fast computer. Meet the Outlanders actor. Angel or Anna, I think. Okay, great. So that's something you can do with your students. You involve them in the task. They can use the chat box, but bear in mind they also have their microphones, so you can ask this as an open class. But the problem with that is you get everyone maybe shouting at once, and it can become a little bit crazy. Now, as a teacher, you can mute and unmute the students in the room, but that's a lot of effort for the teacher. So if you don't want a mass of people talking at once, you either have to be very clear about your nomination technique, who you want to say what at what time, or you use the chat box as well. Valentina, yes, there is an option to mute the microphone. Yes, there is. As the organizer, as the host of the Zoom meeting, you can do that. But students can also do it themselves. Okay, another tool I want to look at really quickly is the stamp tool, which is this one right here. And this is a really neat little tool which can be used for very quick formative assessment, questions, etc. And students have access to this as well. So for example, maybe I've asked my students in my class, do you have a bucket list? And they would either click on the tick or the cross and then click on the page. So maybe it would look something like this. Maybe ask another question. Would you like to run a marathon? Again, they can click anywhere. And as a teacher, I get an instant view of what students are thinking, yes or no. And that's quicker than them typing in it in the chat box, and quicker for them than them all shouting at me, yes or no. Marta, I'm not sure why you can't see the screen. So yes, it is an instant poll, Kate. Yeah, absolutely. It's an instant poll. They can just vote there and then, yes or no. No preparation needed. You ask the question, they do it. Now, of course, within Adobe Connect, the platform we're using today, we don't have the poll, the stamp option, but we do have the hand button. So I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and I want you to raise your hand if you agree or you want to do these things as part of your bucket list. So, hands up if you would like to visit the pyramids in Egypt once Corona has allowed us to travel again. Perfect. Lots of hands going up. Okay. Let's just clear that. Of course, that's everyone, yeah. Okay, I'll ask you another question. Hands up if you would like to go skydiving. I'm going to imagine there are less hands going up this time. Some of you using the chat box, that's fine. Okay, nearly 100 of you voted there. A lot of no's, I think. Okay, and I'm going to ask one more question. Last question. I'm going to clear your statuses. Okay, last question is, again, raise your hand. Who would like to go swimming with dolphins? Okay, many, many hands being raised. Of course, who does not want to go swimming with dolphins? But again, it's just instant polling, instant interaction. It makes sure your students are focused and listening. You know, that's the key thing. Make sure they're engaged. Okay, now, you might be thinking, this is all great, but on my screen, yeah, so in this case, either only I can see the raised hands, yes. Because we're not using Zoom, we're using Adobe. Okay, Evelyn says it's an abuse of dolphins. Well, we can have an ethical discussion about that later, maybe. Okay, now, you might be thinking that this is fine, but I can't really see the page on the book that well. And especially if my students are accessing it through a tablet or, worse still, a mobile phone. So we need to be able to zoom in and out of the page to make it clearer, bigger for our learners. Now, ironically, the one tool missing from Zoom is the Zoom tool. There's no Zoom tool within Zoom. So you need to think outside of the program and think about, if you're using the internet browser, you need to change the zoom on that. So for example, the default on my computer is 150. So that'll allow me to zoom right into whatever web page I am using. And bearing in mind, ebooks are hosted online, generally speaking. Of course, you can download them, but you can zoom in to get a clearer view of them. Or if you're using your desktop, you're screen sharing your desktop, you can change the zoom on your overall image size through the what's the name of it? The toolbar, the main toolbar in your system. Okay, so that's how you can zoom in, and all of a sudden you get a much clearer picture. Okay, so just to reiterate that, zooming in and out, it needs to be done through your web browser or through your desktop. How can I move the ebook inside Zoom? So once I'm in the ebook, you will be able to move around the screen using your arrow as you would do with any kind of online online document. There are, you can probably see here, there's a kind of a scroll bar on the right, and there's a scroll bar at the bottom, so I can move around the page. Okay. Okay, perfect. Let's move on. So once we've sort of zoomed in, we can actually see the activities we want our students to do. And like I said, I just want to focus really quickly here on the fact that we have the embedded audio and video within the ebook. So this was one of the advantages of using an ebook. The content is there. You don't have to worry about it. But what you do need to make sure of is that when you open your Zoom meeting in the first instance, is that you enable the program to play sound as well. Martha, yes. You don't import anything into Zoom. Zoom is just mirroring your screen. So whatever is on your screen, students can see. So it might be a PowerPoint, it might be a web page, it might be an ebook, it might be a Word document, anything. Zoom is just like on top of what is on your screen. So it's super, super easy to use. Everything's kind of, yeah, on top of it. So in this case, we're just clicking on the play button and we have the embedded audio ready to go. How can I move the ebook inside Zoom? Okay, so in this case, the ebook, the screenshot I've got here is on the internet. So I'm just scrolling down as I would on an internet page. I'm at the top, I scroll down. I keep scrolling down. Okay, do students need to download it as well? The Zoom, no. If there's Zoom, all you do is share a link with the students. Students should either have an ebook or a hard copy of the book in an ideal situation. Vitalina, no, they don't have to sign up. They just get sent a link and that is it. Thank you, Emily. I am connected through Adobe Connect for this webinar. It's confusing. We're through Adobe, but we're talking about Zoom. Yeah. Natalia, is embedded audio good to Zoom? I've not had any issues with it at all, I have to say. Okay, let's move on. What other tools are available in Zoom? We have the chat box. And of course, we've seen already, as in this webinar, the chat box is a great way of communication to stop everybody shouting at once. And actually, I think that's a really good point to make in terms of classroom management. A lot of people ask me, how can we manage the class so everyone's not speaking out at the same time? So I mentioned earlier about using the mute buttons, but I'd also actually set out some class rules at the beginning of the class to make sure students know what to expect and what behavior is expected online. And I think the key to it all is nomination. The teacher has to be very clear about nominating people to do different tasks. So don't just say, can anyone answer this question? Maybe pick specific students, or better still, get them to use one of the stamp tools to say that they are ready to answer. If you assign different stamp tools to different students, for example. Okay, anyway, back to the chat box. This is what it looks like. It's very similar to the one that we are using right now, but there are some advantages to it. So, first of all, you can see you can either do a chat to everyone, i.e. the whole class, and this is the default. But you can also chat to individual students. So if you want to give specific feedback to student A without the rest of the class seeing that feedback, you can do that by just changing that and clicking on the correct student. Just be careful that you are clicking on the right student now. You don't want to be messaging the wrong people. So it's basically a private chat for them in that respect. Okay, you can also send files, and this is really important. As a teacher, you should be organized. If there are additional worksheets, files that you want to share with your students, you can do this instantly through the chat box. You don't have to email them before the class. Of course, you can do, but you just attach the file, press send, students open it up, and they can work from that worksheet. Under the three dots, this is a sort of a further menu, and there are some further options in here. But the key one really for me is that you can save the chat. So at the end of the lesson, you want to keep the chat as a record of students' work. Maybe there's some error correction that needs doing from there. You can click save, and it will create a folder in your documents, in my documents, called Zoom, and it will save the chat there. And that is the same, that's the same for recording it as well. So if you wanted to record your lesson, you can do that, and it would save in the same folder. But it's a really nice little tool that you can use. Even the private ones, Kimberly, that's a really good question. I'm not 100% sure about that. I would have to double check. So yeah, Carolina says she does that already. Perfect. And it just gives you that record of learning. Okay. Another question for you guys, get you involved again. How else do you think you could use the chat box feature in your online classes? And as you're doing that, I'm going to answer Irina's question. What is the best way to have learners feedback, or to give feedback? I would personally keep a note of it and email them directly after the lesson using the notes from the lesson. Okay, this is my sharing video, writing instructions, good. Who answers first? Yeah. Discussion and feedback, troubleshooting, questioning, record readings, yeah. You could almost do like a consequence story in the chat box as well, or at lower levels, you know, constructing a sentence. So the first student writes one word, the next student writes another to create a story. Well, a nice comment there from Kate. Checking spelling and grammar in sync with speaking skills, absolutely. But I think this is the beauty of it, because how often do you get to see students actually do writing? Really, just when they do writing homework for you. But when you encourage them to use the chat box, you've got a constant record of their spelling, of their grammar in a written format. Good, Jaime. Copy a student sentence and give them feedback in the whiteboard. Really, really nice. I like that idea. So instantly, you just copy whatever's in the chat box, you can put it into the whiteboard, and then you can annotate it. And I'll show you how you do that in a moment. How do you get colored text in your chat? Within Zoom, I'm not sure it's possible, but if within Adobe, just click on the little menu and you can choose the color of your chat. Yeah, thank you, Natalia. You confirmed what I thought. You can't change in Zoom, but here you can. Can we integrate Kahoot or Quizlet in Zoom? Yes, because Zoom is just like a window into whatever is on your screen. And again, that's something we'll look at in the next session next week. But look, we're running out of time, and I've got things to talk about still. Okay, breakout rooms. Okay, this is the question that came up earlier. What is a breakout room? A breakout room is basically a side room to the main room. And they are an absolute vital component of online teaching. Because a lot of teachers have said to me previously that their biggest concern is that in an online classroom, how are you meant to do pair work? How are you meant to do group work? Because we know as English language teachers, this is the bread and butter of our lessons. How can we teach? We can't have pair work and group work. And there's all this kind of panic. But we don't need to panic, because within Zoom, we have the breakout rooms that allows us to do all the pair work, the group work task very effectively. So, you know, imagine we're giving this exercise to our students. Work in pairs. What are your dreams, goals, and ambitions? How easy will they be to achieve, do you think? So, what do? We open up our breakout room. So we click on the main menu in Zoom, and we click on Breakout Rooms. We can then choose how many rooms we want to have. Now, if you've got 10 students in your class, you'd have 5 rooms. 8 students, 4 rooms. And you can then either assign it automatically or manually. Now, if you want certain students to work together, you of course do it manually, but it takes more time. If you're not worried about who works together and it's completely random, you click on automatically. Are the breakout rooms available on the free version? My understanding, Isabella, is yes, they are. This was the information I was given last week that they are. Yes. Thank you, Emily. Yes, they are. Thank you for confirming that. Okay, so I've assigned my students, but there are some other options as well once I've created the rooms. So I've got 4 rooms there, and I've also got options. And within the options, I can choose various things. I can allow participants to return to the main room at any time. I can get them to close automatically after 2 minutes. So if I want to set a very strict time limit on the room, I can do that. 2 minutes, 3 minutes, whatever it is. I can get them to notify me when the time is up. I can put a countdown in the room so students can see how much time they've got left. So set down countdown timer 60 seconds. So within the last minute, they can see the clock ticking down and they have to finish the activity as quick as they can. This is great for classroom management because it means you don't have to go around the room telling you got 2 minutes left or 60 seconds or whatever it might be. Claudio, great question. Can I monitor all the breakout rooms at the same time? No. But that's not dissimilar to the real classroom, because if you're monitoring a pair in class, you're focused on what they are saying. Yes, you've got half an ear out on the rest of the class, but you're really focused on that pair. Now, as a teacher, as the host, you can jump from room to room at your discretion. So you can listen into each of the different conversations at any given point. If students want some help at any time, and you're in room A and they're in room C, they can press a button. There's a button, I think a help button, that will notify you that they want help. So you can leave room A and go into room C to help them. Okay? So no, you can't monitor all at the same time, but it is easy to jump from room to room. And students enjoy it, as Catherine says, because they feel like they're on their own, but they can actually do the speaking that they wouldn't otherwise get to do in the main room, because otherwise it gets a bit crazy. There's a lot of dead time. You know, if you have to go through every pair one by one in the main room, the other students are going to get bored. Remember, we have to keep them engaged and involved, and that's what the breakout rooms do. So for any pair work, group work, think breakout. How do you get from room to room? Very simply, you just exit room and then enter another one. It's very simple. But like I said, for a more detailed, in-depth tutorial on that, please visit the Zoom website, which has little tutorials on all of these things. Alma says, and they get surprised each time you enter. Yes, of course they do. It's not like I'm knocking on the door, can I come in? I'm just jumping in. But, you know, they should know that. They should know that you can come in at any point and be focusing on the task. Okay. What else? Polls. Yes, polls. This is a really nice feature, again, that is embedded within Zoom. For this, you do need to create these before class time. But that's like you would with any class. You know, you've got your class tomorrow in the real world. You're going to do your photocopies, print out what you need, right? Same difference here. With the polls, you can just create it beforehand. And in this case, it was which of these things would you most like to do? You can choose 3 multiple choice options. So you can have multiple choice, you can have single choice. And you can use polls for all kinds of different things to gauge students' opinions on things. Do they agree or disagree with something? You can even do a grammar presentation through like an inductive approach, guided discovery, using appropriate questions. So where are the polls? Good question from Telhud. So when you, let's go back. So when you click on the main menu, polls are just there, right at the bottom. Michelle, yes, the teachers have to make the polls before the lesson, or at least once you're in the room. You cannot just do it. You could do it instantly, but it takes a bit of time to do. It's very easy, but you need to do it in the classroom. It's going to take time. When you're so limited on time anyway, you need to make sure that all of that is spent on the students. So you open the poll up and then you activate it and you can then share the results. What's nice about it is that when you set up the poll, you can do it so that it is anonymous. So you don't know who's answered what, should you so wish. And I think that's important for some kind of tasks because students don't want to lose face. They want to, you know, they don't want to be embarrassed, basically. So make it anonymous. You can take that out of the equation. But that's just another way of interacting with the students. And it's just mixing things up. Using the stamp tools to gauge opinion, using the polls, using the chat box, using the breakout rooms. They're all ways to engage the learners. Good morning, Roxana. Obviously over in Latin America. Okay, moving on really quickly. Last thing, I think, is the whiteboard. Okay, so Zoom comes with an integrated whiteboard as well. So when you want to share your screen, you click on Share Whiteboard. And it's like this, and you get all the same annotation tools that you had earlier. And again, remember, students have access to this. They can be involved. It is collaborative. So, for example, maybe I've taken this sentence from the chat box and I've put it in, and I want to do some pronunciation work with it. So I might say to students, I want you to mark all of the words or all of the stress words in the sentence. And hopefully they come up with something like that. You might then want to say, okay, that's great. I now want you to think about linking sounds, and you get them to annotate the sentence using a different color. So Zoom is, and online, can use, teaching online, go online, teaching go online. So it just involves them once more, right? And talking about involving once more, what other activities could you do with the interactive whiteboard with the students? Raphael, we started 1 hour ago, I'm afraid. But we are repeating the session at 9 o'clock UK time. Type answers, yeah. Complete sentences, brainstorming, different ideas, gap fills. I mean, basically anything that you do on your whiteboard in the real world classroom, you can probably do it on the interactive version as well. And that's the point I want to make. Again, I'm apologizing if I'm a broken record, but a lot of what we already do is transferable to the online classroom. It's just knowing that we have the tools and knowing how we can use those tools in the classroom, or in the online classroom, I should say. Which should take that fear factor away a little bit. Okay, so look, I just want to finish very, very quickly with 10 tips for successful online lessons. I will go through these again next week as well, all right? And there will be a blog going up on the National Geographic Learning in Focus site in the coming days. So, number one, embrace the challenge. Yes, it can be scary, but, you know, embrace it. Be positive about it. Everyone is in the same boat. Students as well. They're unlikely to have had online lessons already or before. So that's fine. You're all in it together. Number 2, plan lessons effectively. Make sure there's lots of interaction, which is, I think, number 4 maybe. Don't just teach the book, mix things up. Yes, the Coursebook is there to help you, but don't just go through it verbatim. You do need to change certain things because they will not work online the same way they do in the real world classroom. Vital. Prepare and master the technology before you go into class. In other words, find a friend, find a colleague, play around with it together. One of you is the teacher, one of you is the students, kind of thing. Be organized. Have all of your audio, handouts, polls, everything made ready to go before the lesson, just like you would in the real world. Set and manage those expectations in the classroom. I set those rules of what you expect from the students. Keep lessons as interactive as possible. Use the polls, use the chat box, use the annotation tools, the stamps, etc. Get them involved as much as possible. Keep your cameras on, smile. Remember how you felt when I turned my camera off? It wasn't comfortable, was it? And of course, smile, make eye contact, body language, all of these things, because it's all the more important to make that connection with your learners, to build that rapport. And that comes down to you and your performance in front of the camera. Give clear instructions and use the tools to make those instructions clearer. Type them, highlight them, box them, whatever you want. Make them clear. And number 10, final one, don't panic if it doesn't work. It's technology. Everyone knows that there are issues with technology from time to time. Peter Smith said, number 11, don't shout at your screen. You will lose your voice. The students may be far away, but your mic isn't. Nice webinar, Alex. Thank you, Peter. Okay, but listen, there will be a blog on this in more detail in the coming days. So I just want to finish with another poll very quickly. At the start, a lot of you were feeling or a little bit insecure or nervous. I'm hoping now you're feeling more positive about teaching online. So one is you're still super nervous, super anxious. 10, you're super confident. Amade Jordan, the webinar will be repeated later on today if you want to catch it again, okay? Okay, lots of you typing in the chat box. Lovely. Awesome. Thank you for the comments. Okay, I'm going to end the poll, and hopefully you can see most of you are higher up on the system, which is great. And I think that brings us to the end.
So
there were lots of questions throughout, which we're going to, I think we've been able to copy, and we're going to put them into an FAQ really in the coming days, okay? So thank you so much for your time. I'm going to hand back to Emily.
As Alex mentioned, we'll be repeating the session later today. It will be at 5 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 9 p.m. UK time, where Alex is. And we also have part 2 of this session next week at the exact same time, so we hope you can join us again. As you see, Alex has on the screen a site we've created to help teachers support you as you move to virtual teaching. It's called our Online Professional Development Resource page. We have links to webinars related to online teaching, blog posts, some resources on ebooks, so definitely be sure to check that out when you have a chance. You can get to it from our main website or through the link that's right on the screen. We do have several more webinars coming up in addition to the one Alex is doing next week. We have one presented by Dr. Keith Foles on practical ideas for teaching academic vocabulary online. That will be on Monday. We hope you can join us. I'm going to put the link in the chat box right now. And be sure to check out the InFocus blog too for other teaching tips as you move towards an online teaching practice. All right, and as Alex mentioned, if you are using National Geographic Learning books, please do contact your local representative to inquire about obtaining ebooks. That's the best course of action there. Great, I'm going to send you all to a follow-up survey right now. I'd love to hear your feedback so we can help continue bringing you sessions that are useful to your teaching practice. Great, Thank you, everyone. I'm sorry if the link moved too fast. I'm just going to put it back in there right now. Great. And thank you, everyone, for being part of the community. Be sure to follow us on our social channels to connect with our National Geographic Learning community. And we hope we see you again soon at a National Geographic Learning webinar. Great. Have a great rest of your afternoon, morning, or evening. Bye, Alex. Stay safe, everyone.